You're listening to a weekly podcast made by Miami Dolphin fans for Miami Dolphin fans. Your source for entertaining Dolphin news, insight, and general conversation. Here's your host, Michael Fink.
Hey everyone, this is Mike. The Finfans podcast is part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. All right, boys, there's been a lot of changes on the Dolphins the past week. Patrick Graham is going to the New York Giants. To replace him, we have hired Josh Boyer. Jerry Shaplinski is also going to the Giants, and we've hired Robbie Brown. Now, Boyer was a cornerback coach and defensive passing game coordinator. He spent 13 years in New England. He'll be the sixth defensive coordinator in his many seasons for the Dolphins. Brown is filling in the role that Caldwell was actually hired for. Still no word on Caldwell's future. Brown was West Virginia's special assistant to the head coach and senior analyst. He came to West Virginia after serving as the offensive quality control coach and defensive assistant coach with the Jets since 2015, where he worked with Chan Gailey. While with New York, he assisted both the offensive and defensive coordinators in all day-to-day operations. Now, prior to that, Brown served as the run game coordinator and running back coach at South Alabama, and was the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach at Northwestern State in 2013, and had the same role for 4 years. He also served as offensive coordinator at Henderson State. The Fins are also hiring former Illinois coach Austin Clark, who will coach the outside linebackers, and Kurt Kuntz, who spent 7 years at Struthers High School in Ohio to coach the defensive backs. He replaces Tony Oden, who was left over from Adam Gase's staff. Now, at this time, Miami still needs to find a offensive line coach. All right, so this evening I'm here with Jim Johnson.
Good evening, everybody.
And Louis Ragone.
Hello, Dolphins.
So, guys, I just went over the coaching changes. Lou, what are your thoughts with all the coaching turnover?
Well, Mike, as long as the guy at the top is still there in Flores, I'm okay with it. You know, again, we have to trust in his decisions in regard to coaching, in regard to players, you know, everybody around him. So it is what it is. I mean, you know, my opinion on coaching is this, is that you're only as good as the players that play for you to an extent. Now, I know that's not completely true, but over the years, you've seen a hell of a lot of average coaches become really good coaches in the NFL because of the players that they had playing for them. Now, there are times where the coaches are above and beyond that, and there's few and far between. I mean, you guys, the guys that are in the Hall of Fame, you know, the Shulers of the world, those type of guys, Chuck Noll, even though they had really, really good players, especially Noll, you know, they were still icons in regard to head coaching. So, you know, when it comes to these guys that are coaching underneath the head guy, you know, I'm okay with change. You know, it's not like we were world beaters last year. We didn't have a lot of talent. It's not like we have an established group of players here and an established coach here at this point. So I don't think it's all that bad, any of the moves. I think it'll be fine. I think we're not going to skip a beat. You know, we're going to go in the next season and we're going to be just as productive.
The consensus seems to be is what in the world is going on with all of these coaches getting, you know, moved out and, you know, being replaced by relatively unheard of people. The lack of experience is a bit of a concern in certain positions, but I don't feel it's that big of a deal. Everybody seems to be upset about the continuity of the team, and we were building a culture and all of that. And the way I look at it is probably half of our team is going to be different for the 2020 season. So these new coaches are going to be dealing with all new faces anyway, so you're going to have new game plans. I don't see it as a big problem. So like you said, Lou, I think we're just going to keep on going. And if Flores is the legit head coach that we think he is, then he's going to make it work with whoever he brings in. We just got to hope that these coaches can bring up some of these young guns and make them rise for the occasion on Sunday. The one position coach that they haven't brought in yet is an offensive line coach. And, I know Mike and I would love to see, a high-end, good offensive line coach come in and give us something to be proud of on that offensive line. But that's still up in the air.
That is up in the air. But by and large, I agree with what you guys both said. I'm not overly concerned about it. I mean, good coaches have turnover. That's what happens. You've certainly seen it in New England, and you're going to see it here. If Flores is successful, there's going to be a certain amount of turnover from year to year. You guys watched the game last night?
I did.
Yeah, yep.
All the talk is the quarterbacks. What'd you think?
Well, I felt that Mr. Burrows is just above and beyond. Lawrence, you can see he's got a lot of talent, but he struggled a little bit last night. I know it was only one game, but
he got a little flustered.
He did, but boy, I'll tell you what, Burrows was lights out. I mean, he played in front of a big crowd. I mean, did you see the interview? That's what I was more impressed with after the fact, is the kid is just very nonchalant about things. He just won a national championship, and he was doing the interview and just thanking everybody and was just as cool as you could be. He reminds you of like Mahomes. When you see Mahomes on the football field, nothing rattles the kid, and that's what you love. He doesn't look like a deer in headlights. Right. I don't know if you guys watched the post-game interviews and stuff, but I like the kid, and I can understand why there's so much talk about him being the first pick, the first quarterback coming off the board, because he just seems like a great individual. Everything they talked about during the telecast in regard to him being focused game in and game out and studying and just trying to get better and better. I mean, guy.
They really did talk him up, didn't they?
Oh, without a question of a doubt. I mean, and he went out and he performed. So, what more can be said about him? He's an outstanding player, and they have other guys on that team, by the way, that I'd love to see wind up here. I mean, some of those running backs and those receivers on both sides of the football were excellent last night. They have a lot of talent, those two football teams, no question about it.
Yeah, they do. Obviously, they were in the championship game. They don't get there without talent. So.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the most impressive things about Burrows was in the first quarter, you could see that he was rattled. His passes weren't sharp. They were behind in the beginning, and he was nervous. You could see it. And he overcame that and then went lights out for the rest of the game. And I think that
once he settled down.
Yeah, once he got the little bit of jitters out, I mean, he just grit his teeth and said, I'm just going to win this game. And that was, his accuracy was perfect. Some of those long passes were phenomenal. I mean, great catches by receivers as well. But, if the ball's not there, they can't catch them. So, it would be worth trading some picks for to get Mr. Burrows, I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, I think that's probably a pipe dream, because I don't see how the Bengals would pass on him. They could, but I don't think they will.
They'd be silly, completely silly, and it would take having to mortgage the farm to even get them to consider it.
Just
believe.
To make it even worse, the kid's from Ohio, right? It's like the perfect scenario for them.
Exactly.
Well, we've seen crazier things happen, guys. So never say never.
Well, I'm not saying never. I'm just saying I doubt it would happen.
Cincinnati has a lot of needs on top of quarterback. And, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Maybe there's a guy in the draft that they feel will fit into their scheme, whatever it is they do, better than Burrows. And the one thing we have is the ability to give up a lot to get what we need. I mean, we've got 2 number ones next year. We've got 3 this year. We've got 2 second-rounders this year and next year. We have a lot. So if a team really wants to, go in that direction to where, hey, we can pick up 3 or 4 draft picks just by moving down 4 slots, and let's take this quarterback instead of Burrows. It is possible, guys. I mean, I wouldn't, I think it'd be crazy for them to do that, but that team has needs everywhere. I mean, they're worse than we are. And, that's saying a lot. because we have a lot of needs on this team. Cincinnati has more. So with that being said, you never know what's going to take place. You just don't know. So we'll see. I'd love to see him come here, but we'll just have to cross our fingers and pray that Cincinnati decides to make a silly move.
Whatever happens, it's going to be an interesting draft day.
Oh, there's no question. Yep.
It's going to be interesting. It should be fun. Last weekend, we learned that Jimmy Johnson made the Hall of Fame. How do you guys feel about that? Jim?
He was great for the Dallas Cowboys. I didn't particularly like the way things went down when Shula was going out and Johnson came in. I didn't particularly love the way things went down with Dan Marino and Jimmy Johnson. Those two just didn't coexist well. And, he did improve our defense very well. Guys like Zach Thomas and Jason Taylor and all, but Hall of Fame, I don't know. I have a lukewarm feeling about it. I'm just not a huge Jimmy Johnson fan. It seems kind of odd saying my own name, talking about the football coach. But, it's bittersweet. I think there's other coaches that have done just as much, if not more. But, hey, congrats to Jimmy.
I'm kind of on the same page as Jim in regard to Jimmy Johnson. I don't see him as a Hall of Fame coach. I just don't. And, you can throw Cowher in there as well. He was an excellent coach. There's no question about it. But was he better than Marty Schottenheimer? He did get one Super Bowl win. So he did have that. But you look at a guy like Schottenheimer who did it with a couple of different teams and those type of coaches. Is he really, a guy like Cowher or even a Jimmy Johnson that much better? I just don't know. I think that, Jimmy Johnson obviously had the championships with Dallas and he had a great run. When he came here, he had average success. Some of it, wasn't his fault. We did draft some offensive players that got hurt in early rounds. Yatil Green, our first-round pick, which would have helped us offensively, and he did build a great defense here. So he did give us that, like Jim said. He found Zach Thomas, Jason Taylor, Surtain, Madison. He put a great defense together for us those years, and we were a playoff team. So
he also traded way down in the first round and took John Avery instead of Randy Moss, who would have been available had he not traded down.
Right. He did make his mistakes as well. So
he hurt us offensively as much as he helped us defensively, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to Jimmy Johnson and Cowher, I think that Hall of Fame, I don't know. I'm not so sure about them being Hall of Famers.
You think longevity matters?
Yes, I do to an extent. I don't know how many years Cowher coached. I do know that Jimmy Johnson coached in 144 games in his NFL career.
So what is that, 10 seasons roughly?
Probably less than 10 seasons. Yeah. And, Cowher, he had about 240. So, how many seasons does that equivalate to in regard to head coaching?
14.
He had a little bit longer career, and he had the one Super Bowl, but how many times were they there and they just couldn't get over the hump? They were in other Super Bowls. So, it's a tough call. Again, we can go back and forth with this. I think they're right on the edge. Some people love these guys and other people
I think the people that love Jimmy are either Dallas fans or Miami Hurricane fans. I wonder if the average football fan loves him. I can't say.
I can't say either. I do know that Cowher, he was a coach with the Browns prior, Kansas City prior. He was a defensive coordinator with them, and everywhere he went, he was somewhat successful.
I think a little more likable guy.
Yeah, he reminded you of Shula when he was on the sideline. Yeah. He had that jaw that just,
absolutely. With a more likable guy, I think. And I'm not taking nothing away from Jimmy. He was successful. He was a great coach in Dallas. The trade that he pulled off with the Vikings was incredible.
Yes.
I mean, so he definitely did some smart things. I'm not knocking that. I just don't know that when you look at his whole career, and you have to look at his years in Miami as well, I don't know if that's yells Hall of Fame to me, But
right. I mean, Mike, do you know how many years he was in Dallas? Do you guys know?
Not off the top of my head.
I mean, he was there for 5 seasons.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is it. And then he was here for 4 seasons? 96 through 99. Yeah. I mean, that's 4 seasons basically. So, I mean, he had success in Dallas over that 5-year period. 9 years as a coach. I just don't know. I mean, now if you want to lump everything together and throw in his college years, which you can't do because they have a whole separate Hall of Fame.
Right. If you're doing that, then that's different. But I don't think we're doing that.
No, we're not. I mean, he's in the College Hall of Fame now. Should he? And he probably deserves to be there.
Absolutely.
Right. Cowher a little bit more because his career with one team lasted 14 seasons. Right. Now, Jimmy Johnson, with 2 separate teams, only coached for 9 years in the NFL. I don't think that Jimmy deserves to be there, but, obviously people feel differently.
Here's the biggest thing to me with the Hall of Fame, at least recently in the last 15 years or so. It's getting to be a bit of not necessarily a popularity contest, but kind of a notoriety contest. So those names that people remember end up getting into the finalist columns, and then the selection committee only has so many available options. So man, those Cowboys were the America's team and all that, and they saw a lot of winning, and they got very famous for a short period of time. It's fantastic, but the whole Hall of Fame thing, I don't think I see
Jim,
it.
in my mind, it is a popularity contest. Otherwise, Bob Kuechenberg would be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, and that's kind of what I was getting at, but what we were just talking to about Jimmy Johnson is he might not have been very popular with, all the average fans, but the notoriety, the fact that everybody remembers Jimmy Johnson will keep him on their mind. People don't remember the offensive linemen, and Cooch definitely should be in the Hall, but he's not going to get recognized at this point.
Yeah, let me throw something else at you guys. I mentioned Marty Schottenheimer because he came to mind. Right. Marty Schottenheimer, his career record in regular season was 200 and 126 and 1 tie. So his winning percentage over the course of his NFL coaching career, he had a winning percentage of .613. So 200 wins, 126 losses. Where he failed was in the postseason, where he only won 5 games and he lost 13 times. But, when you consider what this guy did over the course of his NFL coaching career, I mean, it's very comparable to what Cowher and Jimmy Johnson did. Now, he didn't get the championships. Cowher had the 1 and Jimmy had 3. But the point of the matter is that this guy was a phenomenal coach, and he's just as deserving if either one, more so than either one of these guys. But like you said, because he's on national TV week in and week out, they both are on different shows, and they're both out there. I think they get a little bit more recognition. Sure. So, and the other thing about Schottenheimer is the fact that he did it with 3 different teams. I mean, he did it with Cleveland. They had a pretty solid team there. Then he went to Kansas City and he put a solid team there. And then in San Diego, he wound up putting a solid team together. They just could not get over the hump at any point. So, he's very comparable to these guys, and you don't ever hear him mentioned. So,
well, I would mention him if somebody asked me, because I always liked Marty. I thought he was an excellent coach, and I thought he's a good human being.
Absolutely. Like I said, Cowher's winning percentage was .623. So, I mean, they are very, very comparable in regard to, their regular season records. So, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the fact he did it with 3 teams and still won that many games speaks something.
It does. It does. And the other thing that we always talk about when it comes to these head coaches is coaches are made great by quarterbacks. And that whole Herschel Walker trade, that gave him Aikman and a whole bunch of other weapons to put together. That was a great deal to pull off, but then a lot of luck involved, and all of those players really came to fruition there for those Cowboys. So, great quarterback play makes for great coaches.
Yep. But, I mean, he was responsible for drafting those guys, so I think you got to give him the credit for it.
No doubt.
So some sanctions came down on the Houston Astros. And immediately, I think just about every NFL fan probably thought, the NFL should be doing something similar to the Patriots. Tell us about it, Lou.
All right, we're going to talk some baseball, huh?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
You're my baseball guy.
Well, I mean, it's deserving. What happened to the Houston Astros won a World Series that year. And basically, that came into play in regard to them stealing signs second half of that year and supposedly all through the playoffs into the World Series. To
it's
me,
like filming a practice, isn't it?
Right. You can't take the championship away from them. What's done is done. But it's really sad that that teams go that route. And the Patriots, I mean, they've been caught with their hand in the cookie jar on 3 different occasions now. So, it's a comparable situation. Baseball put their foot down. The manager got fired. The GM got fired. They got penalized. They took draft picks away from them. I think they got fined $5 million. I mean, they got hit in every way, shape, or form. Now, in regard to the Patriots, Brady got suspended that 1 year. They got slapped on the wrist a couple of times money-wise, which probably means nothing to, those
billionaires.
Those billionaires. And they really haven't done anything that affects the team itself in regard to draft picks, losing draft picks, anything like that. And something has to be said about the amount of success that they have had over the years, because nobody has done it for as long as they have done it in any sport, period. And if, in fact, they've been doing a lot more than what has been discovered, and I wouldn't put it past them because
don't you automatically assume that? If you were caught 3 times, how many times weren't you caught? That's just, common sense.
I've been saying it for years that when you look at their talent and you look at how much they succeed, you give Belichick all the credit in the world, because Brady is, in fact, he manages the offense great. But when you look at the players and on the defensive side over the years, they have solid players, but they don't have the type of guys like, say, the Giants had when they were winning Super Bowls with Lawrence Taylor and Carl Banks, and just a phenomenal defense. They do it all with scheme and with execution. Now, if you know what the offense is throwing at you, it makes it that much easier. And they've been successful on both sides of the football for a long time. So, I mean, I don't want to go out on a limb and sit here and tell you that, these guys have cheated over the last 20 years over and over again. But I think there's something to it. Their success and the fact that they've been successful for so long, regardless of what players are on their football team, because they have such turnover there. And there's got to be something to it. I mean, it's sad. It really is. It's sad. If that's what's getting you Super Bowl victories to the point where you're stealing signals from the other team, it's a major advantage. And what makes you think that they wouldn't do it? I mean, right. It's as simple as that, I mean, if they're doing it in baseball, then there's no reason why, if a team has a system in place as to how they do these type of things, and they've done it for years and gotten away with it, then why not?
Yeah. The thing is, teams have been cheating since there's been organized sports, and a certain amount is going on all the time. But that championship is now tainted in 2017. And, it's the same with some of the Patriots wins. It seems like there's always something. And to just fine a billionaire a few $1 million, doesn't do anything. They should have done more like what they did with the baseball team. Suspend the general manager and the manager. Get them out of the ball. Off the field. And if you take Belichick out of the puzzle, that would have changed things in New England, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean,
they're too much of a cash cow, guys.
Exactly. But think about this for a minute, Mike, okay, and Jim. What they did was they suspended these guys for the year, and then in turn they both got fired, okay? Now, the reason behind it, because supposedly Hinch knew of the situation. There was a couple of situations where he destroyed the camera, whatever they were using. He was against it, but he did not stop it. Okay. Now this most recent incident in regard to the Patriots, where Belichick said, well, I don't really know anything about it. Listen, it's your job. You're the head coach, okay? Don't sit here and tell me that you don't know what's going on in your organization, because I'm not buying that. I didn't buy it when he said it, and I'm not buying it right now, and responsibility has to go somewhere. Now, at this point,
accountability,
absolutely.
Exactly.
Somebody has to be responsible or take responsibility for what took place this past season in regard to that whole situation. And as of now, I haven't heard anything from it in regard to the NFL. You look at this baseball situation, they investigated it, and boom, everything came down, and they came down hard on them. And that's exactly what should be happening to the Patriots, regardless of the fact. I mean, okay, Belichick may say he's innocent, but the point of the matter is that somebody has to take the fall there. So who's it going to be? Probably nobody. And that's the difference between Goodell and our baseball commissioner. They're two different animals altogether. So it is what it is. I mean,
it's frustrating. It's very frustrating because it's the integrity of the sport.
Absolutely. And, we may sound like, we're bashing the Patriots and so on and so forth because they're in our division. And we all hate them. The three of us I know hate them. But the point of the matter is that I respect teams that are very good teams. And up to the point where they've gotten caught cheating over and over again, how do you respect a team like that? You just can't.
You don't.
You can't at this point. You lose respect for them. You're like, oh, Brady's the greatest quarterback. Belichick's the greatest head coach. No, all that goes out the window when you keep having these type of incidents pop up. And you look around the rest of the NFL guys, how many teams over the last 10 years have had issues in regard to this other than them?
Including them, one.
Who is it?
Yeah, I said including them, one.
One, exactly. Yeah. There's how many other teams in the NFL? And there hasn't been one incident in the same time frame as the Patriots have had 3 separate incidents that we know of. Right. I mean, God knows how many different things get covered up, because... Go ahead, Jim.
The Saints had that one episode. What was that one?
Well, that was Bountygate. That was a little different. Yeah. That wasn't really cheating, but I guess you could say it was. Well, it's not in the same neighborhood, I don't think.
I don't think it is either. I mean, They were playing the players to they were basically getting paid to hit the quarterback.
There was a hit squad, right?
And they were giving them extra incentive. Now, if I'm a football player, I don't need any extra incentive to hit the quarterback on the other side of the offensive line, defensive line there. So the point is that that's not even close to what we're talking about. We're talking about cheating, period. That's it. Cheating, plain and simple. Paying a guy extra money for hitting getting to the quarterback on the other side is fine, but I don't consider it cheating. And they got hurt. I mean, their head coach was suspended for a full season. When was Belichick suspended at any point?
Right.
Never. And he's the head man there. Right. Brady took the hit for him in regard to the deflated footballs, but Belichick never got hit on any of that crap. So,
all of his minions take the fall for him.
Right. There you go.
That's what you're supposed to do, right? If you work for Belichick, that's your job.
There you go.
Well, that's it. I mean, no sour grapes here. Just,
no,
it is what it is.
It's the truth. It is what it is.
Yeah. So,
All right, so last weekend we had 4 football games.
Mm-hmm.
49ers handled the Vikings pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, did you watch that game?
I watched some of it. I didn't watch all of it. But, the whole Kirk Cousins thing was part of the problem. But the 49ers were just the better team, and it showed up on game day. They outplayed them pretty much on all sides of the ball. So
they did.
Their defense is scary.
It is. It's very solid, yep.
They're very solid. They shut down Cook, and that's a key to the Vikings' offense. I mean, it was a game at the end of the first half. I think it was, 14-10 at half?
Yep.
And San Francisco just dominated the second half. I think Minnesota had 7 first downs the whole game. And they just went out and played some serious football. And I got to give them all the credit in the world because the Vikings are a very solid football team on both sides, and San Francisco dominated them. So they're going to be a threat. Right now, you would have to say that, with the teams, and I'm not saying they're going to get by Green Bay. We'll talk about that later. But right now, if you had to pick a team out of the 4 remaining teams, you'd have to say that San Francisco is the favorite. And I haven't looked at any odds, Vegas odds or anything like that, but I'm sure they're the favorites.
Well, I can tell you they're 7.5 point favorites over Green Bay.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Nice number.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of that, the Titans are getting 7.5 points against the Chiefs. But let's talk about the Ravens and Titans. Tennessee handled the Ravens, and I don't think anybody expected that.
Yeah, I was shocked to see Baltimore kind of shrink up and go into the shell. I think they were just as shocked as everybody else, and they really didn't respond. They didn't snap out of it, and they never, they weren't making impact plays, and they just couldn't get anything going. And Derrick Henry just kept stepping on them and getting big first downs, and Ryan Tannehill did just enough to get him into the end zone a couple times. So, that was a shocking deal. I kept waiting for Baltimore to do something to fix it, and it just never happened.
What impressed me was the way the Titans shut down the quarterback. He just had nowhere to go.
Yeah, they did. They pushed him right out to the boundaries, and, he had a few small gains, but nothing substantial.
Well, you look at his play in that game, Jackson, okay? And there was never a point where they were down by an incredible amount of points, okay?
Right.
Now, compare what he did to what Mahomes did in his game. And I know I'm jumping, over to another game, but I'm doing it because I want you guys to understand where I'm going with this. Mahomes was down 24-0 and never panicked and just played his game and wound up getting them back into that football game to the point where they won by, I think, 20 points when it was all said and done.
It was incredible. I mean, they scored how many points in a quarter?
Oh, it was insane. But
28, I think.
Yeah.
But my point is this, is that Lamar Jackson had opportunities to get them back in that game. I mean, Tannehill did make his plays, but there was 3 points in that game where Tennessee just could have buried them. They had 3 straight possessions to where had they gone down and scored another touchdown, the game was over. But they kept them in the game, and every time Jackson had opportunities, especially on the 2 4th-and-1 running plays, he wasn't able to get it. And I mean, I didn't understand the coaching on that. I mean, I'm not allowing 180-pound quarterback, 190. I don't know. Maybe he's 200. He doesn't look more than 180 pounds, and he may be bigger than that. But when you got a guy like Mark Ingram behind you, and you got Gus Edwards, you've got big, strong running backs. Give them the football on 4th-and-1 and let them just pound it in there. I mean, why are you playing around with? And he was dancing on both plays. Basically, he took the ball. He didn't just get on the center and go forward. They were not smart plays, but those were just 2 plays among many. I mean, he had opportunities to get them back in that game. And to me, it seemed like he was pouting a lot on the sidelines, and I didn't like what I saw out of him. Whereas when you watched the Mahomes game in Kansas City, you saw him on the sideline getting everybody jacked up. Let's go. We got this. This. It was 2 different people altogether, 2 different personalities, and the results were completely different in my eyes because of that whole situation. So, Jackson's got a lot to learn.
He does. He's young. I mean, he had an incredible season.
Well, Mahomes is young too, Mike. That's my point. I mean,
yes.
there's no age difference between the two of those guys. So,
well, there's an experience difference, right?
Yes, I was just going to say my point would be that Mahomes has dealt with some adversity. And Lamar has just, everything he did this year turned to gold. And, I just, like I mentioned earlier, I think he was shocked and he just
frustrated.
He couldn't come out of it, where Mahomes has been in that situation before and said, listen, we can make this up. It's no big deal. Let's go do it. So, they went out and did it. So just two opposite ends of the spectrum, those games.
Don't you think it's on the coach a little bit to get that quarterback settled down and focused?
Mike, yeah. I'm never going to knock Harbaugh. I mean, he's an outstanding coach.
I'm not saying he's not, but don't you think it's his responsibility to do that?
I think that as a leader on the field, you're having plays called by your head coach, and some of them I agreed with, some of them I didn't. I mean, I felt that them being aggressive on those fourth down plays were fine. Did I agree with Jackson running the football? Probably not. But
you and I disagreed on the first one because I definitely thought it was too soon in the game to be stupid.
I
thought that was stupid.
Was a bad play as far as I'm concerned.
Well, the field position, Mike, I thought I was off on it. I mean, I honestly thought it was around the 50-yard line. You're saying it was in their own end.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do agree with you that extent. I mean, if you're in your own end, and you said, I think it was, the 38-yard line or something?
I think so. It may have been the 40, 42, but it was right in that neighborhood.
I mean, that's probably a little touch and go, but you know what? They've been successful. Nothing that they have done.
But you know what? Your defense had played well up to that point. You're only down, by a touchdown. Mm-hmm. There's no reason to panic. Punt the ball, pin them back, and make them move on your defense.
I totally agree with you, but I can understand the reasoning behind why they did it, because they've done it all year long, and nobody has stopped them in any way, shape, or form. Now, getting back to your question in regard to the head coach, I mean, he's sending the guys in. They had opportunity after opportunity, and they failed. I mean, the quarterback failed them. I mean, there's only so much you can do as a head coach. Lamar Jackson was down by 2 scores, 10 points, and he just could never do anything over and over and over again. He was just getting frustrated by the way they were playing him on defense, and he wasn't able to counter that. So, you saw two different players out there. One reacting one way, one reacting another way. I mean, I watched him as he went to the sideline, and I didn't see him doing anything but pouting over and over again. He put his head down. At times it looked like he was crying on the sideline. You can't do that in the middle of a football game.
There's no crying.
I mean, it seemed like he quit halfway through the game. And I don't know if you guys watched that whole game, but I saw it. When the cameras kept panning over to him on the sideline, he wasn't looking at anything. He was just sitting there. He was, cursing every time he came off. And, it is what it is. I mean, you got 4 quarters to play. He did have a rough game.
And he was used to, listen, they've been rolling over people.
Yes.
So, he needed a little reality check.
Yep.
So he got it.
The whole team did.
Oh, yep. He got it. That's for sure.
He sure did.
Now let's talk about those Chiefs over the Texans, 51-31.
I watched the first part of that game, and I was baffled by Houston being able to basically do what they wanted, and it was 24-0, and I was like, man, this isn't what I expected. And then next thing you know, it's 24-14, 24-21, and I'm like, oh man, Houston's all done. And like we already mentioned, Mahomes rallied the troops, and they started making plays, and that was the end of it. Houston didn't really have an answer. Their coach made some kind of goofy calls himself for Houston, and it was all Kansas City in the second half.
Yeah, they had a weird fourth down fake punt or something in their own end as well in that game, which was kind of weird. But what I took from that game is the fact that
Chiefs offense is tough to stop.
The Chiefs off. I mean, my God. I mean, if you're gonna cover somebody on that team, it's got to be Kelsey, right? I mean, I know Tyreek Hill is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but the guy that moves the chains, play in and play out, is Kelsey, and this guy just destroyed him. And it wasn't like he was, just making phenomenal catches and Mahomes was making these incredible throws. The guy was wide open on 90% of the plays. And I mean, and they never, ever made any changes in regard to schemes or doubling up on him to maybe get the ball.
The announcers were saying it. The announcers were saying, you can double two guys.
Yeah,
right. They were saying it.
Exactly. And I'm watching the game and I'm like, this is just incredible. They're just going to allow this guy to do whatever he wants to do. And they're just going to take advantage of him. And that's basically what happened. I mean, as I watched that game and I watched everybody on that offensive side of the football just early in that game for Kansas City just drop football after football, even more so to cover Kelsey and say, okay, you know what, let these other guys beat us. But it's sure in the hell not going to be Kelsey. And, for whatever reason, they got caught up in the whole, in the game and it just never developed. And Kansas City just went up and down the field, and the end result is 51 points after the first quarter. I think all 51 points came after the first quarter, right?
Yep.
So unbelievable.
Packers and Seahawks.
Packers and Seahawks. That was a real fun game.
It was.
It was the tightest game of the weekend. And I'll tell you what, I mentioned Green Bay earlier going over to San Francisco. I think that's going to be a very good football game because Green Bay, the more you watch them, you see that they have an outstanding running game. That kid Jones is running the football, and they play very good defense. I mean, they did a really good job on Russell Wilson and Seattle's offense, okay?
Yep.
So you throw those two factors in, okay? And then when all of that is said and done and the dust clears, you're looking at Aaron Rodgers on the other side of the football, and you're like, man, oh man, they are not even really utilizing him the way they have in years past. He's just going out there and, just running the show. But when they need him, and they needed him in the fourth quarter, that 3rd and 8 or whatever it was to seal the game, and he just sits back there with ice in his veins and he throws a pass 40 yards down the field on the dime on a 3rd and 8. I mean, that was like a Marino type
right
thing.
Over the shoulder,
over the shoulder. I mean, puts it right on the money with the game on the line. Because I'll tell you what, if he doesn't hit on that play and Russell Wilson gets the football back with 2 minutes plus, that's a problem. That would have been a problem for them. So, you got to give them all the credit in the world. I like Green Bay a lot. I don't know if they're as good as San Francisco, but going into that game next week, and I guess we'll preview it, so I won't go any
we're doing it now, so
we'll do
ahead.
it now. All right, yeah. So you look at that game, okay, and you look at Aaron Rodgers on the Green Bay side of the football, and then you look at San Francisco's quarterback, Garoppolo. I mean, it's hands down Rodgers that you would favor in a game like this. I mean, it becomes a situation where, which defense is going to play better, because Garoppolo is very inconsistent. I mean, he's not a bad quarterback, but he's not Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't have the experience, and he's just not the same type of quarterback. So you got to give the edge there to Green Bay. When it comes down to the rest of the team, the running game, the defenses, you got to probably favor San Francisco on the defensive side. The running attack maybe a little bit on the Green Bay side. So I think this is a really, really good football game that we have coming at us.
Would you take Green Bay and lay 7.5 points?
110%. I'll take Green Bay and the points in this one for sure. Yep, I definitely would. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, when I look at this game, I see a really solid football team with San Francisco, and the thing with them is they don't have much to pull out of their back pocket if they need something special. And Green Bay does. They've got Aaron Rodgers, and he has, he's pulled some miracle plays out of his toolbox there a few times. So if this ends up being a close game, and I think it will, if if it's close and Aaron Rodgers gets the ball, boy, anything can happen. So
yeah, don't give him the ball one score down with 2 minutes to go because you're probably going to lose.
Yeah, you're going to hate it. Yeah. So, if San Francisco can run the ball successfully and control the clock and keep Rodgers on the sidelines, that's their best shot. But, I still like Green Bay in this game.
Do you?
I do. I got a feeling that Rodgers, like you mentioned, Lou, is going to have the experience and know how to make things happen in a playoff game. I'm going to say Green Bay wins this game by 7. I know they're the underdog and all, but I call it a feeling or whatever. I think Green Bay is going to upset the 49ers.
You know what, guys? You got Bosa playing on that defense, and I think he's going to give Rodgers fits. There's no way I'm taking Green Bay in this game. I absolutely think San Francisco at home with that defense, that's going to be tough.
Well, I mean, and I get what you're saying, Mike. You're absolutely right. Their defense is
the crowd noise.
Yes, the crowd. They have the home field advantage. But I mean, listen, I'm agreeing with Jim on this one. Simply, no, I mean, I don't know if they'll upset him, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I still think San Francisco will somehow pull it out because of their defense, but.
Right.
If you look at their offense, Mike, San Francisco's offense, okay, now where's it coming from? It's coming from Kittle. He's their tight end. You take him away from them, and they have Emmanuel Sanders. They have Samuel, the rookie receiver. They have decent running backs and Coleman and Breida. They're okay. You go over to the Green Bay side of the football, and you're dealing with a guy like Aaron Rodgers and a guy like Devontae Adams, who is probably top 3 wide receiver in the NFL right now, and then Aaron Jones at running back, and then you've got Jimmy Graham, who, just so happens to, catch touchdowns every once in a while. You've got a lot of guys on that team that you have to be concerned with as compared to on the San Francisco offensive side. So that kind of tightens the game up a little bit, Mike. I mean, these two teams are very, very even.
It's going to be fun.
Even. It's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, some of the team, San Francisco has strengths on their side and Green Bay has strengths on their side, and they both play into each other. And this game can go either way. It really can. It can go either way.
Like you said, Mike, if Bosa gets there and makes the play, it's going to go San Francisco's way. But if Bosa doesn't quite get there and it's a touchdown, then it's Green Bay's way.
Rodgers is Rodgers. They've got to control him. Right. I mean, there's no question about that. Yeah. But that defense might be good enough to do that.
Yeah,
they might be. They have to stop the running game too, Mike, like I said, because, don't think of them as, their running game as an afterthought, because that's what's carried them.
That's what they do.
Oh, right? Yeah.
Right. Well, Garoppolo, you're going to run.
No. I'm talking about on the Green Bay side with Aaron Jones. I'm talking about their running game. They're not an afterthought.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Rodgers is getting older. They're focusing on the run game.
Mm-hmm.
Is Tannehill going to the Super Bowl?
Go ahead, Jim.
Man, you're going to throw me under the bus on this. I don't think Tannehill is going to be able to get enough done against these Chiefs.
We said that last week.
No, I understand completely, but the Chiefs are a better offense than either of they're not really better than Baltimore, but after seeing what the Chiefs just did to them, in that Houston game, being down and coming back like they did, that just tells me that they're going to be able to make plays.
They're explosive.
They're going to be at home. Tennessee has played very well. Tannehill has played very well. Henry has been an absolute beast. 180 yards in the last 2 games, both. That's crazy. And when you can run that much, it makes the passing game so much easier. And Tannehill had touchdown passes and everything, but I just don't see them being able to control the game enough and being able to outscore the Chiefs. So I think Tannehill is going to be 1 game short of the Super Bowl.
I mean, this game is really interesting because you have on one side of the football, right? You have a running game with a phenomenal offensive line, okay? And you've got a running back that's just phenomenal. Now, with that being said, on the opposite side, Kansas City's defense is not their strength by no means. I mean, they struggle. I mean, they had one of their best defensive linemen out last week. I don't know if he's back this week in Jones, which is key. They have to have him on the field. Now, if you watched the game against Baltimore last week, there were times where Tannehill had all day to throw the football. He was just sitting flat-footed. And, you can attribute that to great offensive line play. Now, with that being said, if they can control the line of scrimmage and they can win the time of possession battle, they can stay in this football game if they keep Mahomes off the football field. Now, on the opposite side, you've got a team that doesn't run the football well, that they're based strictly on passing the ball, even to the running backs. They use their running backs as just, two more receivers or one more receiver on the field. So you're looking at an offense that is just based on a passing game, a completely different end of the spectrum.
Yep.
And it's going to be very interesting to see how they match up. Now, the key to this whole football game is everybody may say it's Henry and everybody may say it's Mahomes or they may pick individual players, but the key to this whole game is Tennessee's defense and how they can stop Kansas City to some extent.
I totally agree with you.
If they can keep them in the 20-point range, they can win this football game. And they can win it simply by running the football, having Tannehill play action, throw a few balls down the field, make some plays, and get some points, because Kansas City's defense is not that good. If Tennessee's defense does not stop Mahomes in any way, shape, or form and doesn't keep them to around 20 points, they're not going to win the game, because I don't think they have enough offensive firepower to go toe-to-toe with Kansas City.
Exactly.
I think if Kansas City puts up 28, 30 points, then Tennessee's not winning this football game.
Right.
So
unless they get defensive scores or something like that. Yeah.
Right. They get some breaks. It all falls down on Tennessee's defense and how well they keep them in that football game. Yep. Because again, the running back's going to get his yards. It's as simple as that. You're not going to stop them. Kansas City doesn't have they don't have the firepower on the defensive side of the football. I mean, they're going to have to put 10 guys in the box if they want to stop them. It's that simple.
Yep.
So
who are you picking?
I'm picking Kansas City. I mean, for the simple fact that they're at home, and I think they just have a little too much offense for Tennessee's defense. But I don't think this game is going to be a blowout by no means either.
I don't either. I like Mahomes, though. I really do. And,
yes.
If I got to pick Tannehill or Mahomes, I'm going Mahomes. And the question is exactly what you said. Is Tennessee's defense up to the task?
Yes.
If they are, then Tennessee can win.
Yep.
Anything else you guys want to add tonight?
I think we covered everything, Mike, didn't we?
I think we did.
Did you check off all your little boxes?
All my boxes are checked.
All right, then I think we're good to go.
There you go.
All right. We will talk to everybody next week.
All right.
Until then, fins up.
Fins up, everybody.
Fins up, Dolphins.
All right, so that's our show for this week. I just want to remind everyone that the Finfans podcast is part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.